new graduates. Congratulations. What an incredibly gratifying moment this must be for you. And I know it's a very proud moment for your families. So how about we give a round of applause to your parents, your friends, your siblings, everyone who's here. I don't have to tell you that this is also an unprecedented moment for Harvard University. In this institution's almost 4-century existence, there has probably never been more attention focused on you than in these last few months, weeks, days. Honestly, in coming to your campus, I feel very much like a medieval messenger who had to sneak through the encircling forces and slip into your besieged community. So first, I bring you my felicitations to the graduates. No recent events can diminish what each of you has accomplished here. Graduates, I also want you to know you have the admiration and the good wishes of so many beyond Harvard. More people than you realize. More people than you realize are grateful More people than you realize are grateful to Harvard for the example it has set. By your willingness to look inward, to make painful and necessary changes, but then ultimately, by your clarity in affirming and courageously defending the essential values of this university, and indeed of this nation. A cascade of draconian government measures has already led to so much uncertainty, so much pain and suffering in this country and across the globe, and more has been threatened. The outrage you must feel, the outrage so many feel, also must surely lead us to a new appreciation. Appreciation for the rule of law and due process, which till now appreciation for the rule of law and due process, which till now we took for granted because this is America after all. And appreciation for those committed to truth, veritas, at a time when the absence of truth has come to feel almost normal. We find new appreciation of actions that demonstrate thoughtfulness, decency, generosity, kindness, humility, and service to community. I'm not Catholic, but I was so moved and inspired, as I'm sure many of you were, to hear those very qualities, humility, generosity, used repeatedly in describing the character of an American and Peruvian citizen, Robert Francis Prevost. The portrayal of this American, now Pope Leo XIV, the spiritual leader of 1.4 billion people, felt like a light after a dark stretch of time. Speaking about Catholicism, may I make a confession? When President Garber invited me to speak here, I was honored, of course, but I asked for some time to think about it because, believe me, I was well aware of the distinguished individuals who have spoken at this ceremony before. I felt you deserve to hear from a star or a Nobel Prize winner, or perhaps, God knows, from the Pope himself. Maybe next year, President Garber. But what made me eventually say yes to President Garber had everything to do with where we all find ourselves in 2025. When legal immigrants and others who are lawfully in this country, including so many of your international students, worry about being wrongly detained and even deported, perhaps it's fitting that you hear from an immigrant like me. Thank you. Perhaps it's fitting that you hear from someone who was born in Ethiopia when it was ruled by an emperor, someone who then lived under the harsh military leader who overthrew the emperor, someone who had at least one of his medical school classmates tortured and disappear, and who saw many other of his medical school classmates become guerrilla fighters fighting against the military dictator. Perhaps it's not so bad that you hear from someone like me who eventually completed his medical training in India just when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, after facing Supreme Court judgments that she didn't care for, declared a national emergency and jailed thousands of students and all her opponents. When, in time, she called for an election, citizens in the world's largest democracy expressed their outrage by voting. She was ousted. It is perhaps also fitting that you should hear from someone who never had a prayer of coming to Harvard or an American university of this caliber for my education. Yet, I want to tell you, I had an excellent education in America all the same. I can bear witness to the dedicated efforts of professors, teachers at colleges, medical schools across this country, county and rural hospitals, veterans hospitals where I've worked, places you may not have heard of, but where nevertheless great patient care is delivered by physicians, many of whom are like me, trained outside of America. We were recruited here because American medical schools simply don't graduate sufficient numbers of physicians to fill the country's need. More than a quarter of the physicians in this country are foreign medical graduates. And many of those foreign physicians ultimately settle in places that others might not find as desirable. So a part of what makes America great, if I may use that phrase, is that it allows an immigrant like me to blossom here, just as generations of other immigrants and their children have flourished and contributed in every walk of life, working to keep America great. America also allowed this immigrant to find his voice as a writer. To quote the late novelist E.L. Doctorow, someone I admire and I got to know, he wrote, "It is the immigrant hordes who keep this country alive, the waves of them arriving year after year. Who believes in America more than the people who run down the gangplank and kiss the ground?" The greatness of America, the greatness of Harvard, is reflected in the fact that someone like me could be invited to speak to you. So thank you, Harvard. Thank you, President Garber. I am honored to be addressing you. As a child growing up in Ethiopia without television until my teens, my notion of America came from the many extraordinary Americans who served in the Peace Corps. Those individuals left an impression of a country that was decent, generous, compassionate, not just to its own citizens, but to other nations.